Ja, ich sitze hier mit Charles Cecil, dem Mastermind hinter Baphomets Fluch, und wir haben eben erfahren, dass Baphomets Fluch 5 angekündigt wird und wurde auf Kickstarter, und wir sprechen jetzt ein paar Sätze über dieses Projekt und etwas im Detail über die Hintergründe. Charles, first of all, thank you for talking to us about this project. First, please tell us about the story of the game. What is the game about?
Okay, well, like a politician, I'm going to answer a slightly different question, if I may. And that's to say that we were, for the first Broken Sword, we used the idea of the Knights Templar, and I like to tell everybody that, remind everybody that this is well before Dan Brown came out with the Da Vinci Code, and indeed a good number of our fans are pretty sure he must have played Broken Sword because of the similarities. But we were part very much of the Knights Templar going into the mainstream, the Zeitgeist. Zeitgeist, that's a German word, isn't it? There you go. It's we're adopting your language here. But then Templars really became quite cliched. There were so many movies, and what I'd like to think is that we come up with ideas that then go into the mainstream. And what's really excited me over the last couple of years was the discovery of things called the Gnostic Gospels. And these were the Gospels written by the Gnostic disciples, like Mary Magdalene, like Thomas, Doubting Thomas, like Judas Iscariot. And they were discovered, or a huge cache were discovered in 1927 in a place called Nag Hammadi in Egypt. And what's really interesting is it shows that right from the time of Jesus, during his lifetime, there was a real schism between the Orthodox, which was Peter, who became the Pope, and obviously the popes came from there, who had one belief, and the Gnostics, who had a very different belief. And the Gnostics were persecuted throughout history until the Albigensian Crusade in the 13th century, when finally a massive army came from the north under the jurisdiction of the Pope to just destroy, and then after that destroy the Cathars and the Gnostics, who were the Cathars in that region. And then after that, they set up the Dominicans to finally eradicate it. So our question is, what was really going on? And what I think is particularly interesting is one of the Gnostic Gospels, called the Testament of Truth, tells the story of the Garden of Eden. But it talks about a jealous God and the bringer of light. Lucifer, of course, is called Lucifer because he's Lux Ferre, the bringer of light, the bringer of enlightenment to man. And it turns the whole story on its head. And you've got a jealous God and this enlightened. And then you look back at the Bible, and it doesn't talk about the devil, Lucifer being the devil. Lucifer very much is the bringer of light. So these are all the ideas that we're exploring in this, and of course it's ideas that resonate into the modern day, and the truth of what this could be and how it influences the what's going on today. So to me this is really interesting. I love this subject matter. I think it's really interesting, and I think it sort of touches a nerve of why religion is what it is, because we say the Nicene Creed, and the Nicene Creed was, the Nicene Creed in church? I believe in one God, but I'm not very religious, but the Nicene Creed is said by millions of people every day, well, hundreds of millions of people every day, and it's affirming a faith. And what it's really saying is, we are not Gnostic. We're not Gnostic, and we totally reject Gnosticism. And this has been indoctrinated. And when you start looking into this, then I personally find it really, really interesting. And you're talking about really important beliefs and ideas. And obviously then what we do is bring those into the modern day. We make them relevant through conspiracies, and indeed the beginning when a religious painting is stolen, and there's a lot of violence, and George and Niko of course both get drawn into this and very quickly realise that for different angles this is a profoundly important painting, and they discover why, of course. So as I said, sorry for not answering the question you asked, but I think somewhere in there I've answered it.
Okay, so you're again focusing on, or not focusing, but having a history lesson, a lesson about the history of religion and Christian myths in this game?
Yes, and the sort of interesting thing is that, it is very, very rich, that scene, because it resonates with so many people who are Christian, Jewish or Muslim. And also because religion is so deeply, even if you're agnostic, religion affects us so profoundly that I think it is very, very interesting. So I don't make any great... And I have to admit, I thought that Indiana Jones, Raiders of the Lost Ark, was such a wonderful film, and I still love watching it. And so I make no apologies for saying I was profoundly inspired. My very first adventure game on the ZX81 was called Inca Curse. And the packaging, everything, was all about that imagery of Indiana Jones running down that corridor with that rock rolling. So, you know, from my very first game through to our Broken Sword games, it is inspired by, and hopefully we take it a lot further than, because you look back at Raiders of the Lost Ark now and it looks very naive in so many ways, and there are plot holes. Like, I've never quite worked out how, you know, he was on that submarine and they went halfway around the world and he never got inside. I mean, how did he do it? You know, when they escape from the dig, you know, there's no way back. They've blown up the aircraft. He goes on a horse, but he still has plenty of time to beat them. I mean, I don't know. Sorry, they fly. There are huge plot holes that actually didn't matter, but probably would do now. And in the games that we write, we take the plot really, really seriously. We would never let plot holes like that go through, because ultimately, I think in the interactive medium, what you're doing is you're making players work, and they're probably less accepting of inconsistencies. Whereas in a film, I think you just go along for the ride and you turn a blind eye to slightly strange holes in the plot and the logic and what people are doing.
So you are less aiming at the pulp genre of an Indiana Jones, where plot holes are accepted for...
No. I mean, I will put Indiana Jones as a great film. I will put Dan Brown as a pulp. I mean, he is a pulp writer, and that's not a bad thing. But we're definitely not in the Dan Brown territory. We're the next generation of Indiana Jones, I'd say.
But where comes George Stobbart in and Nico Collard? So what's their adventure taking on from there?
Okay, well, I don't want to do any spoilers because it's still too far from a release. We've still got 5-6 months before we release. But what I love the idea of is, and again, this is a bit of a spoiler in itself, but you know, George going down one route, Nico going down another, and then actually they come together. So whatever happens, when they go off in different directions, but fate always brings them together. So you've seen from the Kickstarter movie, they start off in this gallery, and it would seem to be just by chance. And you know, Nico in particular is very surprised that George happens to be there, but of course nothing happens by chance. So, but I don't want to give too much away. But I would say that, you know, Nico is following her story, George is following his story. The reason that he needs to get to the bottom of it, they're quite different, but of course they come together and they realise that they're actually working on the same big story, and it's part of a huge conspiracy which they have to stop.
You mentioned the Kickstarter movie. This one looks already really, really polished, and the game scenes in it look really finished, actually. How far along are you in the production, and how final are those game scenes?
We are about halfway through, and it was very useful to put the Kickstarter movie together because obviously those are game assets. So the vast majority of what we've done is going to be of use in terms of obviously the characters, the animation, and the background. What I was keen to do, because we've been working on this for about a year actually. I mean, last Gamescom we were beginning to sort of just think about it and come up with ideas, and really trying to analyse why the first games were popular. And part of it was the hand-drawn look, because if you get a really talented layout artist, what they can do is they can manipulate the perspective to suit the mood that they want. Obviously if you model it in 3D, then you know it's 100% correct, but you lose a lot as well. So at one point we were thinking of using proper perspective, proper models, and then painting textures on, but it just didn't give us what we wanted. So we've very much gone back to the traditional, which in many ways is why it looks so much like an original Broken Sword game, because we work with very skilled people who know how to manipulate perspective, how to create mood, which you just can't do in 3D.
You're doing the game completely in 2D, or are the characters in 3D?
The characters are modelled in 3D and animated in 3D, but then they're rendered, and if necessary adjusted very slightly. So they are 2D, but they are derived from 3D.
Okay, how many team members from the old games, I'm thinking of Steve Ince or Tony Warner, are involved with the new game?
Steve worked with us at the beginning and was great, and that was lovely. He's then moved on, so he's not working with us anymore. Tony is one of the founders of Revolution, and I've worked with him almost continuously since about 1986. So Tony's a very good friend and a very talented programmer, and somebody that I enjoy working with, and I hope that we'll work for many, many more years. But the real joy is bringing back people that we worked with well before in the Revolution days. So we have Noreen Carmody, who's one of the founders as well, is still very much involved. Andy Bosquet was one of the lead programmers in Broken Sword 3. He's come back in again. Sucha Singh, Nana is implementing. We've got a wide range of people that who it's been a great pleasure getting them back in again. And as I say, Steve worked for the first few months and was great, coming up with some ideas, helping design some of the stuff with me. He's doing other things now, but it's great to be able to work with these people that came from Revolution and then come back in again on a very sort of casual basis, because once the project finishes, we'll all go off and do different things and then hopefully come back together again for another project.
That must have been pretty hard, because all of those people probably moved on to other projects and other maybe professions. So how did you organize this?
Well, there are two types of people in life: people who want to work for a wage and to have the security, but there is no security in being employed anymore. There might have been 20, 30 years ago. And people who like the idea of being freelance. And the advantage of freelance is you get paid a bit more, but you have the choice of when you take your holidays. You don't have the security of a project. But the really nice thing about working with people on a more freelance basis is that we've got really good people. So I'm continually selling myself and Revolution to them, and they're continuing, if they want to work with us, they're continuing to sell themselves to, and everything then revolves around the project. And people are very proud. It's very important to them that they're associated with a project that's successful. When you have employees, then it's quite a different relationship, and I've certainly found the freelance one to work much better from both a creative and certainly a financial perspective, because once a project's finished, we don't make much profit in games at all. And you simply can't afford to have people continuing to work for 2 or 3 months without something specifically for them. Revolution financially was in real trouble 2 years ago. We couldn't possibly afford to employ vast numbers of people. And this way it works better for them, it works better for us, and we have a much better working relationship and a much better creative relationship.
It's good to see that flourish again like it does now.